We've received quite a bit of interest in my free to be workshop, so to that effect, beneath this video is a link that will give you a description for the workshop, and we've also included a special discount. So if that's something you would be interested in, I would invite you to click that link, and I hope that you would find the course to be quite beneficial. One of the most common aspects of my work as a therapist is that there would be times that I would hear some gut-wrenching confessions from individuals. And I would listen to people who would come into my office and they would talk with me about some very painful regrets that they would have with respect to the ways that they would respond poorly to a narcissist's initiatives toward them. And I know that many of you who are listening to me right now can nod your head and say, oh yeah, I've been at that place myself. I mean, for example, I would have people talk with me about how they lost their temper, and they didn't just lose it a little bit. They lost it in a big way, and probably losing their temper and having some real strong anger reactions is the number one confession that I would hear people make. But then in addition, I would hear people talk about how I just became chronically secretive. I couldn't afford to be open about it, and I just didn't like the fact that I felt like I was living this ongoing lie because that narcissistic person would make my life so miserable if they found out certain things about me, just even simple things. It may be that that person who's sharing their confessions will say, I got mixed up with the wrong person or the wrong kind of people, to the extent that I was having my own personal private rebellion against all of the stuff that was out there in front of me. I walked away from my core values. There would be so many times that individuals would say, this person that I'm dealing with has very strong narcissistic tendencies, and because of that, I got myself so caught up in all sorts of behavioral and emotional and attitudinal reactions that I lost sight of who I was. I lost sight of my values. I lost sight of who I want to be. And then what's worse is sometimes they'll say, being honest, it became a pattern for me. And when I would listen to people talking with me in that vein, I would feel like I'm standing on hallowed ground. What an honor it is for people to sit down and say, may I share with you things that I really wouldn't share with anyone else, but I want to get beyond this. Now, the narcissist, when you have messed up, when they brought out the worst in you, they've triggered you, they've baited you, they've responded in a very poor way, they've lied to you, they've been very inappropriate. Instead of saying, well, you know what, I've got some things on my side of the equation I need to look at. No, what they'll do is they'll play the victim card and they'll say, yeah, you sure have made my life miserable. And then what's even worse, they'll remind you over and over of the things that you may have done wrong. And they're not at all bashful about sharing with other individuals how sorry of an excuse of a human being you are. Narcissists take great delight in the regret that you feel after they have brought out the very worst in you. What's going on here? What I'd like to do is I'd like to see if I can outline for you 7 incredibly necessary thoughts and ideas for you to hold on to as you're examining the regret that you feel after having been manipulated or exploited or duped or inappropriately drawn in to the narcissist schemes. How are we going to manage the regret that you feel, knowing full well that they want you to park there for the rest of your life? We're not going to let that happen. By the way, there's a phrase that I'm pretty uncomfortable with. It's the phrase, no regrets. And I know that when people say, I have no regrets in my life, well, what I'm assuming that some of them mean is, I don't want to just wallow in all of my negatives. And I get that, and there's actually some legitimacy to that. But when a person says, I have no regrets, sometimes that can be the phrase that a sociopath would use. And I don't want to go into that kind of direction. I want to listen to what the regrets have to say. That having been said, let's take a look at some of the ways that we can manage this emotion. First, let's understand that regret is a negative emotion that can become something positive. Now, I hope that you hear that, because the narcissist, when you have that regret, it's like, yeah, and I sure hope that you understand what that means. That means you are no good. That means you're terrible and there's nothing right about you. But when you have regret, unlike the narcissist, it illustrates you've got a conscience. You have a moral compass. You may have gone off track with that, but the bottom line is it says that there's something stirring on the inside of you. Let's listen to that. What is the emotion of regret telling you? And then the next question is, and are you listening to what it's saying? Which leads directly to a second thought, and that is, remember that regret is a feeling that doesn't have to be permanent. It doesn't have to eliminate every fact that there is about you. Acknowledge the feeling and hold on to it, listen to it like I say, but don't assume that your regret has to become a life sentence. I hope you hear my heart on that. There are times when people say, yeah, but I handle myself poorly, or I don't like the way I manage the stress in front of me. Well, it's not a life sentence. There's more to you than just the sum total of the things that might be negative about you, despite what the narcissist wants you to think. Also, let's understand a third thought about regret is tied to a universal truth. And that universal truth is you're not ideal. No one is ideal. You have a dual nature. There's a side of you that's quite capable of good and love. There's a side of you that's quite capable of impropriety and wrong kind of behavior. In other words, you're a mixed bag. There would be times when people would give me their hard confession, and then they would follow it up with a statement like, well, that's just not me, or I can't believe that. Well, actually, it was you, and you can believe it. Drop the shock, because you're not ideal. Nobody is. And so allow that to be the case, and don't feel like it sets you apart as somebody that's all by themselves on an island. There's about 8 billion other people that are on that island with you, if you want to think of it that way. Now, a fourth thought that we want to hold on to, and this is not something that the narcissist does, but I'm hoping you can, with regret, it can become motivational and informative. When you have regret, it can bring you to the question, like I'm mentioning, what am I learning about myself? What am I learning about my anger? What am I learning about my boundaries or lack of? What am I learning about the foundations for my self-esteem? What am I learning about my inclination toward defensiveness? And by the way, those would be concepts that we would talk about extensively in therapy, which is why I strongly encourage people to go into that. I'm hoping that you can take your regret and say, this is going to be something that informs me. I'm looking forward to the lessons learned. A fifth thought that I'm hoping you can hold on to is, when you have regret, when you know that you've responded poorly and you're in the aftermath now after the worst has been drawn out of you by the narcissist, seek out someone that you can speak openly with. It's so helpful and necessary for you to have support. Now, it might be that it's somebody that's a professional. It might be that it's a recovery group, or it might just be a good friend or a group of good friends, because I can promise you that when you seek out other individuals, they may not have the same story as you, but if they're healthy and growing individuals, they can say, well, I may not have done that, but I've got my humanity too. And when you realize that there are other people in the boat with you, you can actually feel less negatively unique, if you will, which then leads us to a sixth thought that we want to hold on to, and that is, and this is so important, make sure you distinguish between regret and shame. When we talk about shame, particularly in this day and age, we're talking about kind of a permanent indictment against your character. It's like there's nothing good on the inside of you. You're just a one big black blot on the inside. Let's just say when you have regrets and the narcissist has brought the worst out of you, it did reveal that you have those flaws on the inside. But let's also remember that there's still much left on the inside of you that we can build upon, and you don't have to carry shame as a permanent indictment against you. And then number 7, and this is a big one, and this is kind of where I'm going with all of this today, and that is make sure that you make room for lots of taunting from the narcissist. They're going to remind you more than you want of your negativity. Of course, they forget they conveniently forget their own contributions to it, but just make room for it, budget for it. Now, real quickly, we want to ask, what is a narcissist, or why does a narcissist take so much delight when you feel regret after they've brought the worst out in you? And first and foremost, we're going to say it takes the focus off of them. It's like, well, look at you over there. And as long as they can keep that finger of accusation pointing outward toward you, then they don't have to deal with themselves. Let's also remember that the narcissist has a vested interest in keeping you in a down position because it allows them to maintain that false veneer of superiority. But also remember, narcissists are dreadfully afraid of entering into pain. They don't want to enter into your pain. They don't want to, no empathy. They don't want to say, I know that there are some things going on there that you're dealing with. I want to talk with you in a kind way. They're not going to do that. But they certainly don't want to enter into their own pain. They don't want to say, well, if you've got some issues, it reminds me of I've got mine too. They do not want to go into that. They're constantly looking for ways to deflect. And then let's also remember that when you have regret, then somehow in their mind it legitimizes their own anger and their own contempt. You see, they're defined by their anger, and I hope you hear that. They're defined by their anger, and when they get you to a place where you can say, "I regret what I did," it's like, yeah, that's why I feel angry, and that's why I need to have contempt toward you. Look at how sorry of a human being you are. And so they've got their issues. But I'm hoping that you can realize, okay, sometimes the narcissist can bring out the worst in you, but keep in mind, these are manipulators. They want to draw you into their dysfunctional codependent dance. Don't buy into their self-righteous pronouncements, but instead I'm hoping you can think, unlike the narcissist, I look forward to growth. Sometimes my growth is not always pretty, but I know for a fact that I'm moving in a healthy direction. Hold on to that for all it's worth. Know that life with a narcissist is never going to be a smooth sailing kind of thing. It's not a shock when you don't respond properly, but then remove yourself from the negative circumstances and stay on your path. I hope this is something that can touch you on a personal basis. Like I say, whenever I would hear this in my counseling office, I just felt like it was such an honor for me to hear that because I know that I'm in the presence of someone who's really dealing with some significant kind of adjustments. That's why I do the videos. If you've not already hit the subscribe button, I would encourage you to do that, and we're going to keep more coming towards you, and I hope it has a very helpful educational bent for you. If you have that need for therapy, you know that I've been sponsored for years by the people at BetterHelp.com. There's a link below that will take you to their website. We've known since the pandemic that online therapy is very effective, it's affordable, it's accessible. So please, if you have that need, know that we have the resource there. You get a 10% discount on the first month and seek the therapy that you would so richly be able to use. In addition, I have my therapeutic courses. It's like signing up for an online class. I have, and each course has like 25 or more videos with written documentation and guided questions. We have Ready, Set, Connect about making good connections. This is me about establishing your boundaries, free to be, finding yourself after being with that controller. We also have my webinars that are of a different format that have become very popular. We have my podcast. We have articles on our website, my books, lots of resources. Okay, I know that when you've been with a narcissist, particularly over a long period of time, they can draw the worst out of you. But unlike that person who's doing the goading, they don't learn. I'm wanting you to learn, and I'm wanting the regret to take you to a healthy place so that you can move away from it. And in doing so, it allows you to be a lifelong learner, and it positions you, I so hope, to become a person of peace.